Good afternoon, everyone. We're pleased to be able to welcome you here around this roundtable devoted to consumer goods. My name is Shaima Baidi. I work at CIB and I work on strategic planning for our customers. Consumer needs have evolved a lot in the last few years, and the modes of consumption has also been affected by the crisis. Some people were affected, some business models were negatively affected, other businesses benefited from the crisis. The crisis also accelerated certain technological changes to adapt to the new environment. So we are going to share experiences today on what deep tech has brought to the table and to tell us about certain technological changes in industries linked to consumer goods. And so today we have the pleasure of welcoming lots of people who are very involved in this field and who are going to share their experience with us. Anne-Sophie Carrez, who is partner at the LIF Fund, has been working there since 2017, and you've working on investments in the field of deep tech, in seed funds. Samira Bamelal, who is sitting next to me, who's CDO at La Redoute since 2019. You're passionate by the value that can be extracted from data. You are also co-pilot of the AI mission of the group. Stéphane Lanuzel, good afternoon. You're the program director of beauty tech at L'Oréal, a program whose goal is to make L'Oréal the main beauty tech company in the world. You are specialized in the beauty industry and everything that's linked to the digital and technological transformation. You've worked in many different jobs in these fields for the last 15 years. And last not least, Grégoire de Tilly, you are the CEO of La Ruche-Kidioui since 2018. You support the development of La Ruche by preserving its values, meaning the just remuneration of producers, of buying local, in order to take into account the current issues of environmental transformation. I'm also accompanied here by Nicolas van Bülow, who's sitting there next to Grégoire, who's a founder and partner at Clipperton. It's an investment bank made up of a European team that gives advice to companies in the technological field, and I think we can say that you've managed around 40 deals in this field this year. Everyone knows that it's just this year because lots of people here know you very well already. And then at the opposite me, Arnaud de la Tour, co-founder of Hello Tomorrow, a hybrid collaborative platform that is an accelerator for startups and also is a disruption advisor for all types of companies. So as you can see, we have participants who come from many different fields in the field of consumer goods, and so we'd like to bring up three important questions. First of all, how can we make consumption greener and more responsible? Secondly, how can we improve clients' experience by using data? And finally, how to create value through innovation? I'll now give the floor to Nicolas to bring up the first topic. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Green consumption. This is a question that I'd like to ask Grégoire. The company's social responsibilities and green consumption are things that can use technologies in different ways. And what I'm interested in the La Ruche's models is that, on the one hand, you're exposed as a producer to the entrepreneurs of the food industry, and you're also working with consumers. So your positioning in the marketplace, how does this allow you to work on a green consumption and corporate social responsibility to improve the means of production and the working situation, and also with the customers? La Ruche will be 10 years old this week, and our principle is quite simple. We ask ourselves, how can we directly link producers who want to sell their products, good products. How can we protect them from the large retail sellers, and how can we link them up with consumers who are looking for these products and who don't have an easy access to these products. So we really created a marketplace, which is quite a specific marketplace. It's a marketplace that is a meeting point, which is what we call a ruche, which is like a hive. And this is a distribution point with weekly sales where a producer will deliver his products to these sites, and the consumer will have ordered these products ahead of time. Our three pillars are local. The average distance between the producer and the sales point is around 50 kilometers. And it's obviously direct sales. There's no intermediary between, there's no middleman between the producer and the consumer. And also, we want to share the value between the consumer and the producer. We take 11% commission, and the person who's responsible for the hive, for the distribution point, takes 9%. And so most of the profit goes to the producer, whereas in many other types of business models, usually this relationship is completely the other way around. So we guarantee that the producer is fairly paid, and we also do this by guaranteeing a good impact on the local level. And it's a virtuous circle, because since the producer is well paid, he will continue working in this way, and so he'll improve his production. For the consumer, we give them the possibility to have this direct access to products. There's no middleman. We'll also cut costs by not having any middlemen. It might be logistics that's a bit more complicated than in large distribution, but this will give the consumer access to products of far greater quality. Now, I'd like to dig in to this topic a bit further. Like in all different fields, if you want to go green, you also need a good back office. And what's happened in the last 15 years, when you look at the implementation of modern logistic chains, which link up producers to websites and allow them to disseminate things quickly, they're based on that, and they're based on computing as well, which really allow us to guarantee a good corporate social responsibility. But actually, your model is quite centralized. But do you think the decentralized models we've seen in other fields of digital technologies, do you see that could be adapted for your industry? Well, actually, yes, in our model, the name of our company is the hive that said yes, la ruche qui dit oui, and it's actually the hive that agrees with our model of delivery. And what's interesting with the model that we're using is that we've recreated a sort of informal logistics, which means that we're providing to the producers all the computer tools to being able to deal with the orders, all the logistical optimization tools, which allow the egg producer to agree with the vegetable producer so that they can organize themselves together to be able to have good logistic organization when it comes to volumes that are much smaller than those that are sold by big supermarkets. Whereas the main model we're seeing today is that of large masses. So when it comes to the number of tons that are transported, large supermarkets you can't really fight against them, but our system does have its advantages. A couple of words about COVID, maybe. You're working in e-commerce, which was very much impacted by what happened last year. This is a year later. So what are the lessons learned? What's going to stick with you? So we had quite a difficult period because we distribute products in places such as restaurants, schools, in public spaces that were all closed. So we managed, with the help of the local authorities and the local mayors, to find alternate spaces. And once we'd found these spaces, we want to be quite very transparent about figures. Before Before COVID, we had a volume of 50,000 euros, and now we've gone to 100 million. So we've really grown exponentially. We've got 3 more servers at Amazon and a few more employees. So we didn't really have to increase our resources hugely, but that's why these marketplaces really work well. But I think we'll have a volume of 75 million by the end of the year, so we will have kept about half the new customers we'd got, but I think that's generally a good result compared to the pre-COVID period. Just another question about this COVID issue. As a company, you've managed to get back on your feet. But how do you see the changes when it comes to corporate social responsibility and the green economy in the years to come? Like, what do you think the situation is going to be? Well, clearly people are becoming more aware about having to change their behaviors when it comes to the climate emergency that we're faced with. But there is a big gap between what people think, between this awareness and what they actually do. What we see at the Ruche, we're not very restrictive. You have to order once a week and 48 hours before, and then you have to be there to pick the products up in a 2-hour window. And I think the quick businesses and dark stores that are emerging are really the opposite trend. You press a button on your iPhone and you get something delivered in 15 minutes, and that's something that really cuts you away from the producer, from the products. Having healthy local products, that's what we're all about. So yes, there is a new awareness, and there is some of it will stick, but at the same time, the normal way of doing things is catching up with us. And you can see the same thing happening in many different fields when it comes to energy, for example. Right now, you can see that combustion engines in cars are much more efficient and less polluting than they were 20 years ago. But since now we're buying cars that are equipped with computers and airbags and all this technology, well, in the end, it kind of cancels itself out. So that's an example I want to share with you now, because I think you can see this very well in that when it comes to energy and in fighting against climate change. But I think everyone's aware of these issues, but things are not really, people aren't changing the way they're really behaving. Well, but maybe we'll have a different answer from Stéphane for a topic that's maybe not as essential as fruit and vegetables, but about beauty. And maybe you could tell us about how you're taking account these different issues of corporate social responsibility and how you're dealing with them at L'Oréal. I just wanted to react about you saying that beauty products are less essential, but it's true that during the COVID, we did notice that beauty products are an essential product because self-esteem is a very important thing. So I just wanted to react to that. But yes, environmental, climate issues are really important for us. We're a large French corporation with 30 million euros in turnover, and every year we sell 7 billion products all around the world. So green issues have been very important to us for a very long time. And we started in 2006 to ask ourselves how we could separate our growth from our environmental impact when it comes to waste, when it comes to water use, when it comes to CO2. And we started working on this topic at the time. Without telling you the whole of our history, I just want to tell you about what we're doing now, because after the COP21, we took other commitments for 2025 and 2030 in order to protect the planet. And the thing that will help us respect our commitments is technology. We know that technology will be at the heart of our green policy. And I'll give you 2 examples. First of all, plastic recycling is a very important issue for us. We're using more and more recycled plastics, and we're also working on how we can break up the little chains of polymers in order to make them into monomers and to create a sort of circular economy of plastics rather than to use new plastic. So at L'Oréal, we've invested into a company called Cardios, which is a small French company that developed a certain procedure, a plastic recycling procedure, using enzymes. And these are topics that we are investing in. And we are getting stakes in these companies. Icabia is a company that had their IPO recently. Yes, and we worked with them to industrializing their procedures, and they've been growing a lot recently. Another thing is when we're thinking about the environmental impact of our products, there's certain things that we harness when it comes to our distribution, but the greatest impact actually is the use that our customers make of their products. You pollute them most as consumers. When you are washing your hair in the morning, when you're washing the shampoo out of your hair, that has a very serious impact. And that's what at L'Oréal we call Scope 3. And so the challenge for us is to make sure that you use less water to rinse your hair, or maybe to convince you to use cold water if you're brave enough to do so. At the same time, we've invested into a Swiss startup called Bioza that works on shower handles, which makes them much more efficient in the way they rinse shampoo out of your hair. And we're trying to see if we could actually, in order to design a sort of shower handle which could actually have a shampoo, a distributor inside it that would actually use less shampoo than you normally do. So just all this to say that we're working with technological partners and we're investing in tech companies, whereas the traditional model for us was to buy companies, to buy Yves Saint Laurent, to buy Lancôme. And so we're learning to invest in tech companies to help us reach our green objectives. Just a quick question, and just to challenge you a bit. From a governance point of view and an implementation point of view, there's a sort of schizophrenia in large groups, large companies that are not new groups. How do you organize governance in order to force the organization to take decisions on its existing product range, on its packaging, on its marketing strategy, in order to change these behaviors, and not only to work on the consumer side of things? Well, it's very simple. The way we did it is that for each product that we develop, we measure the environmental score of the product. So we can say this product has this kind of score. And this takes into account CO2 emissions, the quantity of waste that it produces. And in our goals, our brand leaders have to show that they're improving the score of the products that they're making. So as part of our bonus at L'Oréal, that takes into account the environmental impact of their products. And so that's how we managed to do this, because by definition, when we evaluate the head of one of our business lines, they're evaluated on the environmental score. And we also developed solid shampoos branded under Garnier. So we spoke a lot about what the consumer's also looking for, meaning maybe cleaner, greener products. But they also want more. They want a more personalized, tailor-made service. And for that, using data is a key element today for all companies that work with consumers. And Sophie, from a investor's point of view, what are the technologies, the applications among the startups that you're working with, what are the ones that are most interesting today?
Since 2003, Elaya has been investing in innovative startups, especially in digital and digital for retail tech, more specifically with Criteo and Miracle that I can mention. Now, data has become absolutely key in the relationship between major retail groups and their customers. In our investment focus, we attempt to identify companies that work on data. Now, what do we do with this data? Well, we've realized that robots and AI models are very important. So when you have AI robots and data, and AI robots are 70% of our portfolio, you are then able to target, to make personalized offers. 70% of our portfolio at Elaya is AI, is robots. Now, there's a company called Miracle. There's been a lot of talk about Miracle in the past few days with fundraising of 2.7 billion with an American fund. It's the second time that they do this kind of unicorn performance. It's a software marketplace company that allows retailers two things that were very new when they first launched the product. First of all, they allow convergence between the brick-and-mortar store and the virtual store. The customer can walk into the brick-and-mortar store, and then if they don't find the pair of shoes that they're looking for, the salesperson can then connect onto the platform of, let's say, the Galeries Lafayette store he works in, and find the shoes that the customer is looking for online. And then the shoes can be delivered next day. So the customer who went to the store, to the brick-and-mortar store, still gets their shoes. They still buy them. So that was entirely new at the time. The second proposal is work on data, which enables us to have data in real time on core business. One of their first customers, Accor, had employed them initially for their internal consumable store for hotels with paper and soap. The Miracle platform are very good in their execution, and they realized very quickly that they received key information on the occupation rate of hotel rooms, because if there's no consumption of paper and soap, the hotel is empty. So they decided to replace their core business stores and to give them to Miracle. So this is a company that is an enabler and that allows retailers to remain competitive in the long term with a platform way of doing things in the face of Amazon, for example, so they can work like Amazon. So this is really transformative for their core business. We can mention another prestigious customer of that brand, L'Oréal, whose representative is sitting next to me, who bought a company that provides hairdressers, and they use the Miracle platform to build platforms for their hairdresser customers so that the hairdressers could sell their products directly to their end users, to the customers who came to their hairdressers. So we have B2B solutions with data at its core. Another example I want to share with you, Euritech. Euritech does trend detection. Again, an AI robot. What Euritech does is that it scrolls social networks and identifies ideas for products that a brand could sell. And then beyond that, beyond the idea for a specific product, it looks at the trends for the coming year. This company has major companies as its customers. They started off with Dior, with a model who was using a saddlebag from 20 years ago from Dior and taken pictures of herself on social networks. And so Eurytech realized that there were thousands of people on social networks commenting on that saddlebag that this model was wearing and how desirable it was. So Eurytech went to see Dior with this information, with this beautifully collected data, and said, we suggest you relaunch that saddlebag. And they relaunched a range of products that did very well indeed. Eurytech then gave real-time feedback as the products were being sold, because customers would take pictures of themselves and other brands would provide feedback on the bag, whether it was too big, maybe we should have a version made out of canvas. And so basically what the customers want is being suggested by the customers themselves. Now I can see that Stéphane would like to react to this. Now, just to add to what you were saying on Miracle and this idea of marketplace, we could think that a large group such as ourselves would be a customer for perhaps Salesforce or that kind of really large-scale solution. But I think the example that you've given us, where we used Miracle, is a very quick market example, with a hairdressing example in America. We used to have salons. Hairdressing salons were our customers, and then the market shifted just over the course of a few months to a salon business, to a stylist business. So the important person is no longer the salon, but the hairdresser, the individual hairdresser who goes and styles their customers at home. So they're no longer affiliated with one salon, but perhaps with several. So the difficulty was no longer to deliver the salons, but the stylists. And solutions such as Miracle are easy to set up. They're easy to implement, they're fast, and you can test very rapidly solutions in order to respond to a change in the market. So it's really important for large corporations to use this kind of agility to respond to quick shifts in the market. Now, as for La Redoute, this is about your core business and the need to analyze data. Talking about Miracle, it's a recent decision we've just made. We've developed our initial marketplace internally. It's not core business for us. We do have a marketplace, but we also have our own products, and we focus on what we tend to do best. And we decided to give up our own platform, and we went for Miracle, which is much more scalable as a platform. We investigated and we ended up choosing them. Some of our competitors, let's call them competitors, well, for them, it's their core business, so they develop their own platform. I'm not going to give any names, but they've called us, and we said that we opted for Miracle after much deliberation, and that we'd given up on our own platform because theirs seems to be very high-performing. Based on what criterion did you base this choice? Because you decided to go for an external technology, when in fact you had already developed it internally. What made you take that decision to go external? When I joined the company, I realized that things were quite chaotic. We used to make choices to develop things internally, but based on what I'm not so sure, or we would buy products. Again, I'm not sure what the basis for those decisions were. So what I suggested, together with Nathalie Ballard, who's the CEO of La Redoute, we suggested a framework in order to structure the way we did things. To what extent buying things off the shelf that's already mature, that's ready to use, can be used by us. And what things should we develop? What's more strategic? And what should we develop internally? This is something that happens quite regularly. I worked for other companies before. I work with a lot of data teams, and if somebody starts to develop a neural network, it has a cost. So I will tend to deploy the efforts where they have an impact on the business strategy and where they set us apart from the competition. So we set up this system. And nowadays, when we have a problem, we ask ourselves, does it already exist elsewhere? Is it mature? Is it strategic for us? And if it doesn't already exist, we still ask ourselves, is that part of what we're supposed to do to fund the R&D for that startup? And if it is not strategic for us, we don't do it. If it is, then we develop it internally. I'd like to comment on what you've just said, Samuel. This question you ask yourselves, do we invest internally, is key. And it's one good criterion for asking yourself that is the size of the marketplace. The size of the market for the marketplace. When you see that the marketplace is a huge market, when its execution quality is equivalent to a multinational, it becomes a business per se. And it's not necessarily the business of a company like La Redoute. So maybe it's better to buy it off the shelf. When everyone's starting out, when you're starting out internally, when Miracle's starting out, well, a few years down the line, that's all they're doing, so Miracle's much better than anyone else. I have an example to do with time and how things change over time. You all know the Modiface application by L'Oréal, which was launched in 2018. So what have the changes that happened there taught you in terms of how the size of things change, in terms of priority? Just to react to what you've just said, image analysis is not really our core business. Well, we decided to do exactly the opposite. In 2018, we purchased 100% a Canadian startup, which was the world leader on image processing, augmented reality, on virtual makeup, because image analysis for the face to detect the first signs of aging, to come up with a skin diagnosis is our core business. In fact, it's the combination of the know-how of those data scientists who developed this ability to detect the first signs of aging, and what L'Oréal has been doing for years, that we were able to develop this skin diagnosis, recommendation, prescription, and therefore to improve our sales. So we've decided to integrate this technology because we wanted to develop it ourselves. You said you've decided the opposite, but in fact it is the same choice. You've decided that because it is your core business and because it is strategic, and for us it wasn't. So, for example, seed discount as marketplace. So in spite of Miracle and despite the existence of a similar offer, they decide to develop in this direction. And I understand why you made this choice. The approach is the same fundamentally. You made this choice because it is your core business and because it's important for you. That's right. And just to react to your question about what we did with Modiface a few years down the line, so we continue to develop the product portfolio, but the point for us, for data, is that this type of application requires a lot of data about our customers, because all the tools we're developing are services, and when you're developing a diagnosis service, you are building a very strong bond with the customer who's going to use it repeatedly. And so that allows you to see different types of uses. You can use customer data, which you can then activate from one brand to another with a bit of CRM. And you also use it to enrich your research. One simple example, the notion of inclusivity is very important for us. When we launch a new range of makeup, we have to make sure that we develop it for all skin tones, all skin types. This is really important. So all of those diagnostic tools for color, for example, enables us to see where there are gaps in the offer and where there are points where the customers aren't fully satisfied. So that feeds research and product development. So there's a virtuous circle of data use where we can reuse data that we get via our services, which then enables us to improve the services even further. One additional question for Samir. You explain why one would use external technology on issues that are not core business. Could you share with us an example of something that is core business for La Redoute, which you did develop further with technology? Yeah, there are different examples. We have a marketplace, but that's not our core business. We have our own products. We have AMPM and Redoute Intérieur furniture, 60% of our turnover, almost 1 billion euros on furniture. Furniture design is core business for us, so detecting trends in this area is really relevant. For promotion, ready-to-wear is very competitive as a market. So we have two main levers: media to attract people on our side, and promotion. Now, for promotion, we used to be quite heavy-handed in order to reach our objectives, and so we're developing algorithms that allow us to maximize our sales potential was reducing the promotion so that we can manage that differently. For media, the same applies. In the way we buy keywords, for example, we've got a whole system that enables us better to target customers and attract them to our sites, because that's really key. When you see that IKEA, since COVID, is going heavily into digital and that the competition is very high on furniture, traffic on our website is really important. So these are the choices we made. Now, for logistics, we have a tool, K30, which is entirely automated. We store the products, we send them, they're our own products. We send 2 million parcels a year with the logistics tool, which requires very few human resources. We have about 30 people, and with that we manage to send a lot of parcels because we don't need to handle them. So these are the types of choices that we go for. We don't have a lot of resources. We make 1.5 billion turnover, so we have to make choices, and we like to focus on what brings in value added. A more provocative question now. As we've seen through those different examples and debates, marketplace has been around for about 10 years. The NVB allows for direct access to consumers. L'Oréal is working as competition, direct competition to stores. So is there a risk for groups such as yourselves that you're not just going to become logistics handlers? It's almost already the case when you look at the patents for Amazon, which we look at closely on a regular basis. That's the case for them. Patents are easy, they're public, so you can just go and look at them. So Amazon sometimes patents unusual things such as drones. Drones can be dangerous, they can be noisy. But commerce, and e-commerce particularly, is very much to do with logistics. So a lot of our work focuses around logistics and customer relations. One example, we have a call center. 63% of calls relate to logistics. when do I get my parcel? How can I send my parcel back? And when will I get my money back, mainly? These are the three issues that come back in 63% of cases. So we need to improve our logistics services. We need to track and collect that data. It's almost like money. A dynamic economy is an economy where money circulates really quickly. So at La Redoute, I need information to flow in a qualitative manner. I need to collect that logistics information in real time in order to pass it on to my clients and to my partners. We also have competition from Netflix and Amazon in a way. So I'm constantly trying to improve this ability to satisfy my customers. And as you were saying, logistics is a key issue for a distributor such as ourselves.
I'd like to react to that. Creativity, emotion, that's also something that plays an important part in when you buy something. And luckily, each one of us as a citizen, as a consumer, we don't just buy things because they have a primary function. When it comes to beauty, emotions, the relationship you have with a brand, these things are important too. And we have a large brand portfolio. And what we've seen during this digital transformation period, we've seen that the brands that work best are the big brands, the ones that have a long history, that encapsulate emotions and have a whole territory. And I believe that there's a pathway for all these large brands to work on this experience. And luckily, the act of buying something is not just finding the most practical way of accessing a function. There's also a lot more, there's creative ways of doing things, there's gamification, including in markets like China, where most distribution goes through e-commerce. The refinement of the e-commerce experience on the website is really incredible when it comes to the brand universe, when it comes to dealing with consumers. They developed live streaming a lot, which really reinstates the human, which creates new connections and creates this bond. So I think there's a lot to be done when it comes to the marketing teams and creators. And the future will not just be made out of logisticians. Something that really saved us is AMPM and Redoute Intérieur, and this is really creativity. We create furniture, and one of the reasons that we did well is that because this was something that was quite well known and inspiring, it means that we had a lot of traffic onto our website. And so we didn't need to base ourselves on specific keywords because AM and PM had this thing you mentioned. It had this creativity, this capacity to attract. And of course, we're competing with Amazon, and we have to deal with that situation, and we have to be at the right level to be able to compete with them. But creativity is something that is very important in this whole experience. Just to pick up on data and logistics, if you're looking for a solution to optimize your deliveries, I have a small company that I'd like to recommend you called Shipit, which creates a connection between your client and your team and monitors the delivery in real time and the customer's expectations. And that way, it makes things easier for your call center. Okay, let's bring up our third question. Well, I wanted to talk about this question of drones. When it comes to innovations, it always starts with a small niche, with a need that's not being met. And with COVID, when we're talking about delivering biomaterials and vaccines, that these are things that needed to be delivered very quickly. And so we were even thinking about implementing, even in France actually, to implement drone delivery for sensitive medical equipment. And so this is something that maybe will not seem so far-fetched as all that someday in the future. But before moving on to the last part, we're talking about how we use data. And when I see La Redoute, it reminds me of my mother who used to use her Minitel, the French proto-internet some years ago. Well, things have evolved since then, but I get the impression that we're talking about the data from social networks, purchasing data. So we're talking about very targeted sales, but I don't think we're at the right level of personalization when it comes to nutrition, health. I think we need very specific information about different parameters about the customer's physiology. We were talking about skin tone, for example. So how do you deal with this data? We've seen that things like Quantify Self didn't really work. Is it telephones and Apple Watch that will help to create this value, or is it the producers of the products or the ingredients? I know there are companies such as Givaudan, BFF, who are thinking about this. So maybe my question would be the following one. Do you think it's like the Holy Grail? Will we never attain this level? Or can we have access to this data and get this information from the consumer in a seamless way as part of their everyday life? I'll try and answer your question by using an example that was something we're doing right now, which is personalized lipstick. This is a project that we've launched in the US. Just to answer your question about the quantified self, the measurement tool that we'll all use is the one we all have, meaning our smartphones. So all the work for companies such as ours is to see how we can work with smartphone designers in order to bring elements on board that can allow us to get data that will allow us to have better product analysis. And so we're working on analyzing selfies and on pictures that are taken by smartphones. So this is to answer your question about measurement tools. And then we'll can think of developing a machine that will be sold for around $299 and that will allow you to personalize your lipstick, just like with a printer or when you put ink in it. You'll add different colors to this machine, and you'll be able to scan different colors and make your own personalized lipstick. This is something that works. It hasn't been, it's not at scale yet. Now, I don't know if this is the beginning of a disruptive technology. I don't know if it will become anything other than a niche market, but it is something that exists, and I think that technological barriers are being removed little by little. It's not like with autonomous vehicles, like self-driving cars, where there's a lot of progress that has to still be made. Whereas with this, it's like little things that still need to be fine-tuned, but it's possible. I have a question. I have a comment about medical constants, which we invested in e-medical, which transforms a selfie into a stethoscope. So you can use cell phones, as long as it's less than 4 years old, which will analyze the light emitted by the phone, the way it's reflected on your skin, and it interacts with the blood vessels that are under the skin. And thanks to this, the algorithm can actually garner medical data. And this is a market that really skyrocketed during COVID. What's the name of this application? eVirtual. So, Stéphane, when you're working with Apple or Samsung, for example, it's in your interest, if there's a new market, well, since the value is shared, who's going to capture the greater part of the value? Is it the telephone manufacturers? Is it the people who deliver the products? Or is it you, the producers? Well, I can't answer that question because, of course, this is what negotiations are made up of now, partnerships. But we do have discussions with smartphone designers, manufacturers. We also have conversations with Microsoft when they have apps like Teams to see what we can think of together. And more often, we have these these technological partnership conversations with these major players. And these discussions are they don't only deal with issues of social networks or online advertising. We have real conversations about the fundamental technologies that allow us to roll out different services. Just like to bounce off that. In my previous company I worked in, we wanted to do what you were talking about. But for us, it wasn't an issue of measuring, because in media you can actually track people's behaviors quite easily. But what was at stake was our capacity to present an offer that would meet the customer's needs according to this analysis. So we'd analyze behaviors, and then we'd have a DCO which allowed us to hash contents that would allow us to provide something that would be in line with the measurements. But I think that slowly but surely we'll be able to measure what needs to be measured and then provide products that are more and more personalized. I think that is something we'll manage to do. Now, whether it be mature companies or startups, you can see that you need to work with quite a lot of partners in order to be able to bring these solutions to market. And so, between Miracle, the first use case for recycling plastics, this seemed like much less mature. But maybe I have a question for Anne-Sophie. Do we have to wait for a startup to already be at scale to be able to have value, or how can you work with a startup when it's starting up, when it's not very mature yet? How can you support them? And in order to make their first use cases, it's more risky. And so what would the value created there be? Well, it will be huge value. We invest in startups from the very beginning. So we're absolutely convinced that they represent huge value for at a very early stage. Now, what we say to our investors is that when a company is really very, very young, what's very inspiring for you when you're presented with the portfolio is this idea of detecting new trends. We all know today that lots of important innovations are born in startups. And so when you have a young startup in the risk phase where they haven't proven themselves yet, you may have the opportunity to see a real breakthrough. And this detecting these trends is something we really find with venture capital teams. It's our job, is to be able to go through thousands of startups every year and to do 10, 20 deals a year at Elia, and to choose the companies that really do have this transformative value. And twice a year we organize strategic meetings with our corporate investors in order to present them with these new startups. So, for example, we saw fintech as a new thing, and so we really wanted to raise awareness among our investors about this, in case some of our investors didn't know so much about fintech. We did something similar about digital technology for health, and this is a way for us to allow our investors to get informed on these trends. So when we have a very young startup, we'll present them to our investors. We can explain to them that we have this company that measures someone's skin tone, for example. Are you interested in it? And you might say, yes, I am interested in that. And then if in a few months they can really create a real product, then you can come back to me and I'd be interested in it. So this is how an investor can help build a relationship with a future supplier. Another thing that can be done is to co-develop a product. If a large product producer, manufacturer trusts a startup, there are large groups that have this innovative approach, and we have good examples of that here today. And when they can work with small companies, like Accor, which really helped Miracle take off. It's one of the clients that was best serviced by Miracle. And then also this helps to have a long-term competitive advantage, because often that way you have a better positioning thanks to this product. Following the portfolios of these startups. So the idea is to have access to the prime access at the right time, at a moment of go-to-market, because it's a moment when it's not expensive either, which means that it's something that's quite advantageous there, which can create even more value for a group. Not expensive, you say, well, I hope it's enough to let them make ends meet and develop their companies. Well, when you're talking about creating value, the first concept's a good thing, but you need to scale up. And so we have an entrepreneur here with us, Grégoire. You were talking earlier on about a turnover that had really gone up. How did you deal with your growth? Earlier on today, we were talking about Uber and companies like Uber that finance their growth to the detriment of their profits. They've never been profitable, and we're wondering if they ever will be. So a question for you, what are the constraints of your growth? Is it linked to IT or human resources? And have you managed to have growth and be profitable? I don't know if we have enough time left. I'll try to answer very quickly. Our constraints are mainly linked to technology and human resources. A marketplace really tries to make the community of producers, of sellers grow, and on the other hand, to make the consumers grow too. And if you get one part of the equation wrong, if there's too many producers and not enough clients, or vice versa, then it doesn't work. So there's really work to make this work, and that's something that we do thanks to technology. And we also do this with support teams. And when I say support teams, I mean it's not just business teams, it's not just marketing teams. We're quite good at communication at Larouche. We have a brand that's quite well known. We don't actually spend much money on promotion on Facebook or Google. But when it comes to profitability, I'd say we're largely profitable. It wasn't always the case, but right now we have a very bullish market. And so we would prioritize revenue to the detriment of profits for many years, and that's kind of the trend today. We don't know what tomorrow will be made of, and so we're trying to be careful and have a growth that is reasonable, but we do want to generate growth, and we're trying to do this in a reasonable manner. If you look at markets such as quick commerce and dark stores, things like that. I was talking to a fund the other day who was saying it's really a race to the bottom, and the only winners in this will be Google and Facebook. But you also have to manage your company the way you really want to. Well, we've been very talkative today. We've gone over time, so we don't know what tomorrow will be made of, but I see that you're full of hope and confidence. You don't seem to be too concerned. You have a lot of confidence in the future. And Anne-Sophie said during one of our previous conversations that tech is the new goal, and I think that can be the conclusion of this roundtable. Thank you for your participation. And if you had any questions, we'll have a few moments after the last presentations to be able to have some exchanges. Thank you very much.